Hey guys, and welcome to tonight's episode of Get Good, a short live stream series and VODs to assist players in lower ranks to understand common mistakes they could be making and lower their chance of advancing. With me tonight we have Coffee, Magicgnome as per normal, and welcome please Gondo, solo lane god, from what, Twisted Vision. You were in Aztec. Who else have you?
Aztec.
No, you were in Aztec, weren't you? Or not Aztec, Get Good, not Get Good. That's this. GG go next.
Outlaws.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, he was in their team. But beside the point, welcome. Tonight we are talking about the solo lane role. We'll jump right into it because straight after this we've got the spring series, which these guys are going to be participating in. I don't know. Gondo, are you on a team?
I think I'm not needed today.
Oh, there you go.
I'm kind of filling in, so.
Yeah, he was just filling in for us last week.
Well, now you've got ulti, so the full Get Good squad's there.
Ah.
You sound so
No
happy
more
about that.
Ragnaros.
Yeah.
No more Ragnaros.
No
So
more
we're
We're
Ragnar.
not changing for We're not changing the name.
Damn it! I really wanted this. I've wanted these guys to change their names since I saw them all in the same team, and I'm like, and they refuse. It's disappointing me. But jumping into the solo laner, first up, same as last week, we're going to talk about the types of solo laner. Whereas last week we talked about the assassin role and the different types of assassins, such as your melee assassin, burst assassin, mage, sustain, ranged, everything like that. Solo laners have the same sort of kit. You've got your specialists, which that's going to be reworked soon. You've got like Zagaras, Asmodans. I like to think of Asmodan not really as a solo laner, but as more of a team player because you want him to get those globe stacks pretty early. And then you've got your bruiser type assassins, such as your Sonya, your Rel. Mal'Ganis can be classed as a solo laner, really, can't he? And then your sustain assassins. So I look at the sustain assassin, because I put that one in there, as like your Falstads and Rayners, because they can sustain pretty well, but they can also like heal themselves in their ranged assassins. So they're pretty decent in the solo lane.
You can also put Malthal in that as well. Like those heroes all have a way to sustain themselves. They can be used in the solo lane. The problem with them is, generally speaking, they're easy to gank.
Yeah.
So you need to be super aware of what's going on the map, and if your 4-man's losing, you're probably going to get destroyed.
Yeah. I mean, we'll go into the map awareness and stuff like that in a bit, but talking about the specialist role, which is going to be disappearing. A lot of those are being moved into assassin or bruisers or support with Abatha. What do you think about the specialist role as a solo laner, Gondo?
Generally, I think most of the specialists don't really have a place in the solo lane in competitive play, high level play. But I feel like, especially heroes like Nazeebo, show really, really strong performances in any ranked games, even up to Diamond and Master sometimes, just because they bring some sort of difference to the team than the usual tanky bruiser. Obviously, it depends on the team comp, but I do think they have a place in just casual Hero League play or even Team League play, where you can draft around a different style of team comp, which opens up more of a flexibility in 4-man. So you're not bound to have like 2 range DPS in the 4-man, but you can have some sort of bruiser in the 4-man, which enables potential early game power spikes there.
Nice. So you've given up on the old Zagara in the solo lane? You don't like him? Her?
Zagara is good in some situations and really bad in others. So, like, you find a draft where she fit in well, can make her totally work, but pick it early, you're just gonna get counter drafted.
Fair enough. Well, let me be selfish for a second here. I'm a Zagara main. Everyone knows that. I love my Zagara. Over level 100, thank you very much. Not that I should really be proud of that, but I love picking Zagara regardless of where in the draft I pick her. I don't often get bodied in a solo lane, whether it's 1v1 or 1v2. I can usually hold the lane pretty well. It doesn't mean I'll win it, but I can hold it easily. The ability to get creep up gives a lot of vision, helps the team in terms of, and helps me in terms of rotations as well, because I can see where they're coming from. A lot of push potential, depending on your build, and decent team fight potential as well. So What can I be doing wrong with Zagara that as a solo laner you should be doing?
So on a lot of maps, that it's very important to be winning the solo lane to help your team, like Dragonshire and Braxis specifically, because they've got 2 points on each side of the map. If you constantly have lost one of the points, it's going to be a huge detriment for your team. So it becomes very hard to just straight up first pick a Zagara and decide, yep, I'm going to win because Zagara is good against most heroes. Because all it takes is like a Blaze or a really good Illidan, and you're going to get destroyed. And then you're not any help to your team. The other thing is Zagara specifically, like the assassins I was talking about, very weak to rotations with mobility. You've got creep to help you survive, but heroes like Genji will just ignore the creep. Like he's got
mobility as
well. There's no way you're gonna be able to scout a Genji rotating unless he like isn't watching his map as he walks up.
I mean, this is something that Gondo said before about picking someone like Zagara early in the draft is heroes like Genji, as you mentioned, Zeratul, Tracer, they can all easily counter a Zagara, and I found that out the hard way. Because they would just roam into the lane, come in, kill me, and then run away. And I'm like, well, wow, I was doing so well. But other specialists...
As soon as you die, you lose a lot of that advantage.
Oh, of course, because especially in bigger maps where Zagara really flourishes, such as like your Infernal Shrines, your Cursed Hollow, maps like multi-lane maps that are really far apart, such as those two. They're probably the biggest maps in the game in competitive anyway. And the benefit of those solo lane heroes is to basically hold and win that matchup. And if it forces another member of the enemy team to come and have to contest with you, it means that the rest of the team are fighting 4v3, which is a massive advantage for them. What other things in regard to specialist heroes in the solo lane can you tell us?
Quite a few of the specialists, such as Zagara, as you mentioned, and then also things like Probius and Gazo. They all have a problem that they don't have any sort of self-sustain in the early lane, in the early game, which means that not only are they vulnerable to Genji coming ganking them, and even if he doesn't kill you, you're even having to tap the Fountain and a half, you can just take damage during trades in lane, and you have no way of healing it up. Which means that in the long run, they are just going to get an advantage against you. So if you're playing someone like Zagara or Rexxar, then you have to make sure you're staying super safe because you do not have healing like, say, a Sonya or Malphelle that can basically in one wave just go from 0 to 100. It's quite obnoxious.
Well, speaking of, let's move into your sustain assassins. So these are your, as you mentioned, your Malthaels, your Ragnarosses. They can be sustain solo laners. Reyna, Falstad, any others you guys can think of that are pretty pivotal in that solo lane? Thrall, yes, Thrall's a massive one.
Phoenix occasionally gets used in solo lane.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's pretty much most of
They're the major ones. I've seen Jimmy's do it, obviously.
Yeah, Jimmy Reyna's. Falstad's a good one because it's got the global ability as well. But the main thing to know about these heroes is that they are good in terms of damage. Most of the time they're good at clearing waves, which is really important as a solo laner. And they have some form of either mobility or sustain in terms of life regen. Reyna's got his E. Falstad can take his AA's heal at level 4. He's also got his barrel roll as well for mobility.
Falstad also only gets his wave clear at 7, which is
it is a bit of
you need to keep in mind.
Bit of a letdown in the early game, but the global kind of makes up for that, I think. Who else we got? Ragnaros has his Q, heal on Q. Malthael, he self heals from his W.
So actually, something to note about these solo laners, mainly the melee ones like Malthael and Rag, and to some extent Thrall, they all need to be able to access the minion wave in order to. So when you're playing a matchup against any of those, if you start to win a trade, you have to make sure that after the trade you're able to keep them off your minion wave, so they're unable to heal up. So you want to punish them every time that they come even close to the minion wave, in order to extend that lead and prevent them from healing up.
So that's talking about countering a solo laner. How would you combat someone that's trying to do that to you as a solo laner and win that?
So, what kind of hero pick are we talking? Those melee assassin?
Let's look at a melee assassin such as Thrall, Rexar, not Rexar, Thrall, Ragnaros, or Malthael.
So, specifically against those three, you want to usually have range damage. So a Phoenix or a Falstad are both really good in punishing those two solo laners. That's one way to deal with it because you're basically able to poke them every single time. It's a bit more scary against Thrall because he can just Q your face all the time after he gets the double Q, and then you actually struggle with sustain. You have to absolutely abuse your range though in order to do that. Phoenix is probably the easiest to abuse these laners because he has a lot of range and he has self-sustain while being ranged. He's good wave clear, so you can pressure them out. Another thing to mention is once you win the trades as a ranged laner against the melee assassin, you want to avoid pushing the lane in as much as possible. So they actually have to extend themselves into your lane half, which then enables you to have more area to deny them and keep hitting them from range. And you also want to avoid taking any melee trades against these heroes unless you're sure you're going to win the trade and basically kill them.
Yeah, these heroes, especially Thrall in particular, are generally bursty with their damage, so they want to get their abilities in, like Thrall wants to get his 3 hits of Wind Fury, his Q off, and then he wants to back out, and wait for his cooldowns to come back up, so you either want to not take the burst fights, or you want to try and make a sustained fight in some way, if you want to trade with them.
And roles reverse, say you're playing that melee assassin and you've been put up against a Falstad or a Rainer or something, what's the easiest way to kind of overcome and win that lane trade?
The biggest thing is absolutely using fog. Okay, using either just normal fog or the bushes around the lane. Try to always be mounted up whenever you're not actually actively trading or clearing the lane, and ambush them. Whenever you get the chance to punish a ranged laner, Phoenix is a bit more shield, but if you have the chance to take a trade with them, usually you win if you're close enough to them to be able to get your damage out. Because you have higher base stats as a melee hero compared to a ranged hero. Because they have the range advantage, so they're naturally weak to that. So once you have the lane advantage, you can just keep pushing the lane in really hard, and in between, you have time to roam the map, put pressure in other lanes. That's one of the biggest impacts you can have as a solo laner is when you get the lane pushed out and you have lane presence, you're able to extend your pressure into other lanes, potentially get a kill, get a camp. Soak even like on 3-lane maps, soak the mid lane, tell your team you got it, so they have more time to stay as 4-man, maybe pressure bot turret, maybe get a bot camp, or you can set up for a 5v4 in mid to get a hard engage with your tank going. That's all really good opportunities for solo lane to have an impact, especially in pro play. You see that a lot when one solo laner is coming earlier than the other, usually because he has better, stronger lane. Enables the team to have more time in between to do impactful things.
Such as your camps and that. So, I mean, this is something we talked about last week in regard to the assassin. It's about clearing your wave as fast as possible so you can do other things.
Yeah.
Because once your wave is clear, there's no point in you really being there anymore. Unless you're going to take the fight, there's no point you staying in that lane. You've got time to then go and roam into another lane, like Gondo said, or go get a camp or something. Put some map pressure on while they have to deal with it. Yeah.
With the solo lane specifically, it is a little bit different in that the other side can freeze the lane, and once they freeze the lane, because you've got an extra 3 range minions or something that'll be attacking at the time, by the time those heroes come back from mid lane to top, you can sometimes get maybe 3 minions killed before they get there or something. So in that respect, that's one thing you can do to try and get an advantage. Even if you do have a losing matchup, you just keep the lane pushed as much as possible and try and deny them as much XP as you can, because you're not able to match up with
Push
the
towards
rotation
your
that
own
he's
tower.
doing.
Towards your own tower, right?
Yeah. It needs to be pushed towards your tower as much as possible if you don't have a fantastic matchup.
The other huge thing when you play melee assassins in solo lane that can really, really help turn things around, especially against ranged matchups, is getting a gank from any of your team members. When you're struggling in solo lane, don't feel like you need to like shoulder the weight of the whole solo lane by yourself. Ask your tank, if you have a Murder and you have a Diablo, the tank has time to rotate up once. Make sure your team stays safe while they're in without their tank, obviously. But if a tank has a chance to come up once and he's not spotted, you usually get either a kill, you force the enemy back, or you just chunk them so hard that they're like half health, and then you have kill pressure again by yourself. That can really turn the dynamic of the lane around a lot, especially for the melee assassins, because they need to be able to access the minion wave to heal up, which then enables them to snowball the lane.
Conversely, on the other side, if you have a fantastic lane and you will 100% win a 1v1 100% of the time, your entire job is to not have your team rotate and not have any problems in that lane. If you can do that, that's easily your most important feature. Getting kills is nice, but if you're just ensuring that you're denying them as much XP or pushing as much as possible while staying alive and just doing whatever else you can, then you're already doing way more than the other side is.
If you do have that much of a advantage in the solo lane for whatever reason, you have to be doubly careful to not get yourself ganked, because that's the only way that they are going to be able to retake the wave. You got to make sure that they're like, hey, I'm losing this lane, I need a gank, and then you don't want to actually be there in the middle of the lane when the gank comes and then die or take all the damage. When you're ahead, just play safe, just keep your lead. You don't need to go and force a solo kill. You don't need to take a tower, especially now that tower XP is getting nerfed even more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll get into that later.
I'm not looking
but
forward to that.
you do not need to push forward in the lane any more than it takes to soak the wave.
So that's actually a good transition point to solo lane tanks.
Bruisers,
Bruisers and tanks, they naturally have the innate ability to be resilient to ganks in some ways, because they just have a high health pool. So you have more room to fuck it up. Like,
to some
and
extent,
get away with it, right? So
to make a mistake and get away with it, not to fuck it up, die, and then your team's left in the hole.
But like you get away. Usually they have high self-sustain, so they can heal it up again and they can stay in lane. So for these kind of heroes, really all you want to do is you want to get your wave cleared if you can freely. If you can't, just let it push in, clear it in front of turrets, not a problem. And then usually you have CC in that lane, so when you get a gank, you're the one who provides the CC. So these tanks are safer to play, and they fill a different role in the team fight, where they are like this semi-second front line and enable the teammates that are in the other lanes to be strong.
Yeah, we mentioned some of these tanks before. The tanks we're talking about like Sonya, Yrel, Mal'Ganis can work as a solo laner, Blaze, Dahaka, Artanis. These are bruiser tanks that have CC, have some sort of lockdown, have some way of keeping themselves alive while still being able to continue soak that lane, and they're safer in regard to that second aspect, so they're not going to die as easily. But yeah, there are a couple of bruisers that I probably wouldn't recommend in that solo lane. Any that you come to mind, Gondo, Coffee?
You need to have enough wave clear to actually get wave clear in a reasonable amount of time. You don't want the other solo lane to be leaving way ahead of you. So things such as, for example, tanks like Diablo would not be good, because although they're super tanky, they're not going to get ganked. They also can't clear the wave. Your Firestorm does not do enough damage. Conversely, a tank like ETC, he can spec into wave clear at level 7 with the Echo Pedal, which helps him, and then he becomes fine as a solo lane, I guess. You would take it most people stage dive, but it works a lot better than something like Diablo.
I was going to say the issue with that with an ETC is that if you've got an ETC that's playing the solo lane, there are so many other heroes that can do it better, and having him spec into a solo lane sort of role means that you don't have him as a main tank. So you're going to have another main tank. Is that about right?
Yep. The point I'm getting at is that although you like to be super tanky as this type of solo lane, you definitely need to be able to clear the wave as well. Things such as the ones you said before, the Artanis, the Sonya, the Dahaka, they can pretty easily clear the wave with their abilities and be super tanky at the same time, which makes them better than the typical main tanks you see like Garrosh Although he sometimes sees playing solo lane these days, it's weird.
I
Things like
don't
Garrosh,
understand
Murder,
Garrosh
and
as a solo
Diablo.
laner.
It's better than you would think it is, but
He actually has really strong 1v1 pressure just with the way he gets tanky and he can heal a lot when he's lower. So
he just
kinda
wins
struggle
the
fish.
points on maps like Vaxis and Dragonshire and doesn't care about the wave because he knows that he can't push the wave out faster than they can.
Yeah. The first bruiser slash tank that comes to mind that's terrible in the solo lane tends to be someone like a Varian, who, similar to what you mentioned in regard to your Garrosh in the solo lane, they can win a point because they can stay on that target, especially if they've taken like Twin Blades, but their wave clear is ridiculously minimal.
Yeah. So Varian is a special case in that sense, as he's like garbage until level 7, and then he starts winning like 99% of the matchups in the solo lane, which on maps where the objective is really powerful and is solo lane specific is really strong. Like you have a Varian Braxis, you get to level 7, you almost have guaranteed top lane pressure all the time. There's literally nothing you can do about it unless you have a specific counter set up.
Of course,
Well-
if their variant took something like Colossus Smash, he's extremely vulnerable getting ganked.
Yeah,
So,
so I'm saying Twin Blade Varian with the auto tech heal on level 7.
yeah. Twin
Yeah.
Blade's relatively safe, Taunt is super safe, but that is fight as well. Colossus
Well,
Smash is super risky.
Taunt is unplayable in solo lane as a tank.
Mm.
Like you can't do it. But actually, most of the tanks have pretty good wave clear.
Twin
But
Blades,
you wouldn't
The
want
problem
to.
is if you grab these main tanks with wave clear, like Johanna, Stitches are the main ones I'm thinking of. They've got great wave clear, and they can. I mean, Stitches specifically can match up against most heroes and kind of just sit there on the point. No one, like, it'd take forever for them to get off, and he can clear wave as well. So in that aspect, he's kind of fine with what everybody else is doing. But then he gets into a team fight and he's not really doing anything most of the time. Offlaners come in from the side or something like that because of what they're doing. They're clearing waves, they've got to go off and do offlaner things, which I'm sure we'll be talking about more later on. But because of that, they come in from a different angle than the rest of your team, and all of a sudden the Stitches coming in from an offside isn't really going to do anything. He hooks someone, there's no follow-up. So it becomes, in that aspect, a lot of the meta heroes right now are just really great teamfight heroes that also win matchups, and if you can get both, that's generally speaking your best offlaner in that game.
Well,
That's very true.
yeah. So, well, moving on from the types of the solo laner, we talked about this a little bit before, the couple of them, especially Zagara, map and team awareness. So, as a solo laner, I know that with every hero, regardless of who you're playing, regardless of what role you're playing, you need to be map aware, you need to be team aware, so you need to know where the enemy team is as much as you possibly can, what's happening on the map and stuff like that. As a solo laner, it just becomes super, super important. Because if the enemy team's missing, it is very likely they come in to kill you. Especially if you're winning that lane and winning it very, very easily.
Yep.
Other things that you guys can bring up about that?
Actually, just a quick notation about Twin Blades Varian.
Oh, go for it.
So Twin Blades Varian wave clear isn't bad by any means once you get to like level 4 or 7, but it is still considerably slower than other solo laners that can clear it safer and quicker, like a Zeratul, a Blaze, a Sonya. They all can like clear the wave while also trading effectively and do it really, really fast. Whereas Varian, he has to choose who he hits. If he hits you, you push the wave in. If he doesn't hit you, you push the wave in faster and you have time to run.
The
So in that
difference
regard-
between Twin Blade variant and, say, Dahaka is that Twin Blade variant is using auto attacks to clear the wave while Dahaka is using spells, which means that Dahaka will be significantly faster than variant at even clearing, and then also, like you said, Twin Blade variant has to choose between clear or fight. Dahaka can simply do both.
Yeah.
And Dahak is the only, one of the only globals as well, so he's also adding that. He's got pressure everywhere on the map just by being alive.
Dahaka's disgusting hero. He should be nerfed.
He's amazing. Dahaka is one of my favorite solo laners, second to Zagara. I mean, Falstad's pretty good as well. Come on, the global with Falstad's on a
The
similar
thing is,
cooldown.
Dahaka's got a stun, so in that aspect, he's always just like if you get a stun on the right person, you just win. So
Dahaka is a Falstad that doesn't get ganked, has a stun and a silence. It's not even close to
And
Haka's.
more global.
Yeah,
The
and better global.
If you say-
heal
if you
Better
say-
anyway.
global.
Solo
Like the
lane.
Haka is just a better Falstad. It's kind of sad
He's a
that
better
way.
Falstad, but he's Malay. And
Yeah.
Well,
In that aspect, yeah, like
oh, he's
Falstad used to
Malay.
be picked.
Come on.
Yeah,
How is he
used
not Malay?
Falstad used to be picked against Dahaka specifically because Dahaka's melee.
Yeah.
Of course, now the
both-
meta's changed and the Haka takes tissue regen and he doesn't care about Falstad or attacks anymore.
Yeah.
Well, it's not quite that good,
It's
but
not-
yeah.
yeah,
It's
but
pretty
like,
good.
You can play around it in a sense that you have more attack, you have more direct fight pressure.
Mm.
The other thing is Falstad's damage kept getting nerfed a while
Yeah.
ago, and now it's like, as much as he's still an assassin, he's a really squishy assassin that tends to have to back off really fast in fights, and then he doesn't get his damage out. So
He's almost like a specialist now, the way you have to play him with Gust. He has a specific niche that he plays into with the global and Gust as a.
Going back to your map and team awareness, because we've talked considerably about the types of solo laners and who can win 1v1s and stuff like that. Things, especially objectives, are really key points that you should be keeping in mind. We've got a lot more time, and we've talked about this a couple of times over the past couple of episodes. But there's plenty of time, plenty of notice, plenty of warning when an objective's about to come up. Most of the time, if you've played the game for long enough, you know when that's going to happen anyway. You know where the objectives are going to be, with the exception of like the random ones. But even then, it gives you enough notice so you can prep for it. But as a solo laner, it's a lot more important, with the exception of maybe, say, Dahaka and Falstad, which we talked about previously, where they've got that global, so they can take longer in that lane. And the longer you keep an enemy hero in that lane, and then you can burrow in or fly into where the objective is and do the outmatch and make it a 4v3 or a 5v4 or something like that. You need to know when these are happening so you can get ready to rotate into those objectives or decide whether you're going to stay in that lane.
Yeah, that's something I was about to mention. Like, you need to decide ahead of time, and I mean way ahead of time, what you're going to be doing in the objective. Like, quite often, like you mentioned Zagara a lot at the beginning.
Did I?
Yeah, I remember that a little. But like Zagara specifically isn't fantastic in a straight up team fight, but she's amazing at pushing. So like, especially in the first objective, maybe the second objective, generally speaking, you're just looking to push another lane. The same with like Sylvanas, like that they can get far more value because they can just grab a fort for free by not showing up to this objective.
But
and then
don't
all
play
your team needs
Sylvanas
to
in
do...
the solo lane.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying that. I'm just
explicit.
saying like
Explicit.
yeah. I mean, there are some stuff she can do, but
have you
honestly, I think she's
seen
just too weak
the
at the moment.
newest explicit strategy? Do you
Oh,
mind if
I
we
have
talk
played
about it?
both with and against it, and I love it.
What is it?
With his Sylvanas, what he's been doing, I don't know if it's changed any time in the last week or so, but he's kind of going past the first fort and getting the minion wave at the keep and shutting down the towers of the keep and starting doing work on that. He might get ganked a couple of times, but he pretty much will do his normal stay in that one lane and keep pushing it. But him being able to go past the fort, kill the minions before they even get to your wave, means your wave's constantly pushing up. And unless someone goes back and deals with you, and he's pretty good at getting away scot-free, he's getting damage on a keep, and the minions aren't getting anywhere near your wave. So you've got like 3 or 4 waves of minions that are just pushing against their towers, getting XP. He's getting the minion XP up at the keep.
That's something that won't work at the higher level play
hell
though,
no. Hell no.
because like, on top of the fact that like if you react in time, you can usually stop it before it does enough damage to make up for the fact that he dies. But even apart from that, especially if you see a Sylvanas on the other side, you need to be aware they're just looking to backdoor something. Like 100% of the game, all they're doing is trying to backdoor something. If they're not, why the hell they go Sylvanas? Like, there would just be no point for them to do it if they're not trying to backdoor something. So you need to, especially the offlaners, this is actually a good time to be mentioning it. Like, your main job will usually be to stop that happening. So it's just a matter of trying to predict when they're going to show up in other times and when they're going to show up to the objective and just matching that. making sure she doesn't get value.
It reminds me a lot of that Murky in the Tempest on the Dignitas series, who was trying to do the exact same thing. The difference is that as in the higher level games, they actually respond to it, and he gets killed every time, and they deal with waves pushing in easily. Just need to be map aware, and it does absolutely nothing.
On that note, Sylvanas, or specifically the Spectre Sylvanas, if you are able to play Zeratul, you pick Zeratul, you just win.
There's a lot of things that just beat Sylvanas. It's quite sad.
Yeah, but like Sylvanas has
Varian's a
no
good one
way
as well.
to escape from Zeratul because you have a blink and you have a
Vorpal
follow-up
Blade,
on
yeah.
wherever she goes. So follow her, you just Vorpal Blade.
However, at the same time, if you're doing that, you need to be aware of where she's pushing, because you can't follow her if you're at the objective and she's just killing your keep.
Yeah. So on that one, I also want to quickly mention something about solo laning and how to clear the wave effectively, which is most of these solo laners have spells to clear the wave, and most of them have cooldowns. So in general, what you want to be doing is you want to get up to the wave, you want to pop your AoE spell onto the wave, like a Dehaka W or something. And then generally you want to not keep standing there and hitting the wave, but you want to get off the map so they don't know where you are. You can stay outside of vision range of the minions, and be in range for the XP. And then with your second activation of your AoE ability, you clear the wave, and then you leave the lane again, you look for opportunities. In a similar fashion, Zeratul would Q the wave, would go invisible again, Q the wave again, but be mounted in between. So if a Sylvanas pops up somewhere near anywhere he can respond to, he's already mounted, he's already behind the wave, you can just run her straight away. And the enemy doesn't know where you are in the meantime, so they have to think, oh, do I back down now as a Sylvanas? But if I see that my solo lane counter matchup is still in the lane just hitting minions, I'm fine to do whatever I want to do and run towards the keep. So that's a big thing.
It also stops ganks completely, because the gank, like, you can't gank a hero that isn't there. Just how it works.
So yeah, you want to be mounted about 80% of the time in solo lane.
That's a very good point. I try to do that with any hero that I play, especially like an assassin or something like that. But you want to be mounted as often as possible, because it's just extra movement speed. If the enemy hero is not mounted, it gives you a way to catch up to them. It's just always going to be better. So if you're not clearing a wave, if you're not in a fight, be mounted. It's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what we were talking about, map awareness, team awareness. If the enemy team's missing, you're probably going to get ganked. Be careful. Don't overextend too far. As Gondo mentioned earlier in regard to clearing your waves, clear it, back it up, play safe. I mean, obviously it's always map and team dependent, because it depends. You need to be able to know who you're up against, what you're up against, whether you're going to win that matchup or not. But once you get there, the simplest way is just to play safe, right?
So the number one
Once
thing...
you know the matchup, play safe. I'd say you need to learn it first. So if you aren't 100% sure, just try and think of what the heroes are doing and try and figure out a way to win. And just learn. It's just best strategy.
Well,
if you just play safe from the beginning, you're not going to learn. So
that's true in some ways. You got to just keep in mind the number one thing that is going to win you the game, any ranked game you play, is if you get the experience and you don't die, you're present for team fights, the hero allows for it, then you generally have made the biggest impact that you can as a solo lane. So you should always have top XP by a large margin. You should have enough kill and assist participation to show for your presence in team fights. And you should generally have top siege damage, because you're clearing a lot of waves, which counts as siege damage. So that's stats that you can look at that kind of are able to show you how well you're doing solo lane. And you should have 0 deaths.
I was going to say, a lot of
If
heroes
you're not
actually
top
have...
experience,
yeah.
then you have played it terribly wrong somehow, or
there
someone
are
else is duo
exceptions.
soaking.
I mean, there's always exceptions with
The
anything.
experience
Like
at
a
the format
Zeratul
games.
rarely actually gets highest XP, because
What?
Wow.
At least in Hero League, like until level 10.
I haven't played a Zeratul game in Hero League in solo where I haven't had top experience.
Well, I'm only really doing it in low level games, so it's pretty easy to get it. But because high-level games I'm a tank player, so
Mm.
it might be a little different because
Then can you play
haven't
Zeratul
played
in
it
my games then
recently.
instead? Because I'm sick of you playing tank in my games. This is ridiculously annoying. I'm telling you. Matchups. I mean, we sort of talked about matchups earlier on when we were talking about the types of solo laner, but matchups are important as well. So we talked about what matchups can counter others, such as like if you're against a melee solo laner, range tends to be the better matchup.
Another good one is tanks for that matter.
Yeah.
Because it's the least volatile matchup you can have. If you pick a melee into a melee, it's generally the better player wins, but both are really, really susceptible to any outside influence to the lane. Which, even if you're better than the other melee assassin, you're just gonna get shut down by 1 or 2 gank. Your lane's pretty much just soaking and being from behind. Whereas if you play a tank, you can just clear the wave, either at tower or in lane, whichever the other one lets you do. And then you can have a strong teamfight impact without having any sort of danger to die.
That's why it's generally speaking the boosters that are played in the HGC games, because they struggle to lose lanes even if they can't necessarily win them outright. They will always be consistent, they'll be safe, and they'll be there for the team fights and do everything else they need to.
Should we talk about any specific hero matchups? Maybe someone in chat is interested in a specific matchup.
Well, while they are looking at the specific hero matchup, well, I did have a question previously by Ultimatrium, which Coffee laughed at earlier because he knew it was coming. Ana as a solo laner. Now that we've got you, Gondo, how viable is Ana as a solo laner?
Oh, well, it's kind of hard to make a judgment on a hero when you haven't played it or played against it. I would say with the self-sustain she gets, she's actually a bit of a pain to deal with for a lot of heroes. But usually your 4-man's dead without a healer. Like,
unless you're running double support again, that's like 5 metas ago.
So the only really viable option is to run double support or run something like Abathur. Now, if you run double support, generally you're gonna get rolled by something like a Zeratul or some sort of like instant deletion. So in general, I'd say, well, Ana's also really weak to ganks. So if they have any sort of ganker on the enemy team, you're also pretty much done for. But apart from that, if you fit it into your draft and your only goal is to make the other solo laner's life miserable, sure. You might still not win the game from it, but I guess you could win the lane from it.
You also have your global presence of Eye of Horus. You could contribute with 6 shots that will probably put on the map.
Oh god.
I will just point out the reason why we're talking about this is if it's feasible in any way, shape, or form is because anybody gets XP. Like we talked about this last week. Anybody in range is going to get the XP.
Almost any hero is able to solo lane if they just give the XP. The difference is they'll not have a presence on the map, they'll not be able to take a point on Baxis or Dragonshire. But anyone can soak XP, so Ana can soak XP, which means Ana can solo lane. Even though you shouldn't do it, because you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
He also has terrible wave clear, so you're always going to get pushed in and you're always going to lose structure.
I mean, it goes back to what we've said pretty much every goddamn episode on this show. If just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do that. Just because a healer can solo lane doesn't mean it should. And it's one of those things where, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but in my opinion, if there are plenty of other heroes that can do the job your hero is doing but better, why aren't you playing those other heroes?
Yeah, you should always be aiming for the best in terms of what you can do.
I mean, I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a time where double support was the meta, DPS Lily was the meta. Not like ideally
that was a short period.
Very, very short period when she got massively buffed in one of the patches, and pretty much she could win any 1v1 just because of her sustain, her blind.
She still can do that.
Yeah, she can.
Lily is still disgusting.
She's still broken. Well. but there are so many other heroes that can do her job but better. And by playing her as that an assassin role or as a solo lane role, you're removing a big aspect of your team composition. Well, that's what I think anyway.
The biggest issue really just comes down to wave clear and impact on the game outside of your solo lane. Like, this is not League of Legends. If you win your solo lane, you're still going to lose the game if you don't have outside of the solo lane. Or, like, you don't have much impact, right? So the two main ways to have impact as a solo laner, or like there's 3 ways, but the 2 biggest ones are experience and teamfight presence, map presence. The third one is winning your lane alone, getting the objective in your lane. That's the third one. And that's not even applicable to all maps. So if you can do experience and you can do presence on the map, fight presence, then you're winning. Doesn't matter if you got shit on in lane and both of your towers are gone. If you got the experience from all of it, you're like up in experience by a lot. You're just gonna hit level 7, hit level 10 first, get ultimates, snowball the game from right. Killing the opponent is literally useless.
Who wins versus Rexxar and Braxis?
Anyone that ganks Vexar beats him.
I mean,
Yeah.
Genji
Misha
solo
is-
actually wins, so
Genji solo laner?
yeah.
The way
Let's
that
go.
Vexar works, because
I
I've
mean,
actually
the
played
thing
Vexar
is-
a bit, is he clears waves while Misha sits on the point and fights you, and because you have ridiculous healing on Misha, she will win that fight actually. The problem is Vexar can't heal himself, which means that anyone who can get damage on Vexar, like a Genji, like a Tracer,
Zeratul,
will actually
yeah.
have a
Yes.
Zeratul in particular, will have a
Genji
very
can
good
just-
time.
Even
Genji
a
can
Gen-
just dive on the Rexxar, do a bit of damage and run away, and Rexxar won't heal that damage. So he's eventually going to win the lane. Like, it might take 2 or 3 goes at doing that, but that's like every 20 seconds you completely force the Rexxar out of the lane. That's completely worth it.
I can't say I agree with that statement, but
What are your thoughts on that?
well,
I mean, I've done it in
don't
Hero
think
League, so
I don't think Genji is viable
League
in
XD.
Braxis in the solo lane. If you get Genji on Braxis, you pick him in the 4-man and destroy Rexer that way.
Just rotate as a
yeah, you can
roaming
just
king.
rotate and kill him. You should have an offlaner, and then Genji will rotate and kill.
Yeah.
Does play Genji
statement's
as the
fine, that's
offlane.
Oh yeah, I mean it goes back to what we said before. Just because Genji can win that fight against Rexxar in the solo lane doesn't mean he should. There are other heroes that
I
can
mean,
probably do
I
it better.
was forced to do that purely because we didn't have an offlaner, and I
wow.
won it. But even still, like, 100% in a 4-man is just better, so you shouldn't be doing it as an offlaner.
I believe Rexer would beat again in the solo lane.
Probably if it was played perfectly. but
Depends
I
on
don't
who
know.
was playing it. Come on, I mean it
It's all-
does
it's
come
all about
down
the
to
globes
knowing
and
your
the
hero,
placement.
knowing your matchups, about the experience that you've got. Anyone who's better at a hero is probably going to win a matchup against a not so good player on that other hero.
I
You've
mean,
also got
evenly
stuff
matched,
like,
yeah.
as soon as you stuff up on some heroes, there's just no coming back. Like, if Rexxar loses 3/4 of his health, he just can't do anything.
Same for
Like,
Genji though.
That's true for
Yeah, same
basically
with Genji,
all
100%.
of the ranged solo laners as well, except for Phoenix, who has a freaking shield. Like,
Mhm.
if Volstad loses much of himself, he's screwed. He can't even reach the wave to heal off it.
Yeah.
If Vayner loses all his health, he's screwed because Adrenaline Rush isn't that big of a heal, and it's on a long cooldown.
But that's actually a good point. Phoenix is really strong against Rexer in the solo lane.
There you go.
Because you can trade freely, you can shove the wave in very, very fast, and then Rexer struggles, and any damage you get on Rexer sticks. You also generally would take the Q quest in that matchup just to get the extra rotation. Gives you faster wave clear, strong single solo lane presence. When playing against Rexer in the solo lane, specifically on Braxis, you want to avoid fighting into Misha. If Rexer puts Misha on point, you have free wave clear. If Rexer pulls Misha off point, you go back on point, cap it. That way you alternate the trade on the actual cap, and your team can get some ticks if they hold bottom lane or not. But generally, you want to always shove the wave first before you contest the Rexer on point. Unless you have a gank or you have a dive pressure, able to just kill the Rexer straight out. That's the biggest thing. Like, if you play Ragnaros against the Rexer, you should win because you clear the wave really fast and put all your Ws on Rexer himself, and that way you win.
Dark conversion. We're talking about Morgana's there. We've got a couple of other points. We're running low on time because we've got the spring series in about 14 minutes. But the next couple of points we can pretty much breeze through because we've talked about it all already. Matchups we just finished talking about really. Positioning, that's probably a bit more of an important one, but team fights kind of blends in with that. What we talked about earlier was playing safe, but at the same time knowing where you are and where the rest of the enemy team is. So it comes down to your map awareness as well. Your positioning in regard to a solo laner, you really don't want to be past that halfway mark if you don't know where the enemy team is. But at the same time, if you know the enemy team are like in a massive fight up in the top lane and you're winning that bottom lane really easily, you can push in a little bit more. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's correct. Like, whenever the enemy team's showing, you don't have to care about not being off the wave and being in fog. So if you're winning the lane and they're showing in other lanes, it's actually really important. It's actually your job to be really aggressive and position really far forward, because you want to draw the attention towards you so that you relieve pressure off the foreman. If you ever played in a 5-man team and everyone's on comms and your solo lane gets smashed in all the time, you're not going to be focused solely on winning your 4-man like you should. So you're basically enabling the 4-man by winning your solo lane, but not dying to ganks.
Of course.
So you really got to be aware of the minimap and check out where the enemies are, and also just have a feeling of what times are they going to be rotating top, bottom. Sometimes it's even worth to die to a gank if you know that they went out of their way so far to get to you in specific numbers that they spent so much time trying to kill you that the kill is actually not worth it because the team can get more somewhere else.
If on Dragonshire, they send 3 people up to kill you, that means there's 4 people top lane, which means that you can easily push up bottom, get the wall, get the well, and then you're at a huge advantage for the rest of the game, because without the well, they struggle to contest the bottom objective.
So that's laning. Outside of laning, I'm just gonna generalize it here. Most solo laners are gonna be melee, semi-tanky, bruiser type of heroes. So for most of them, the same rules apply. You want to go in at the same time or slightly after your main tank, and you want to come from a different angle than you. If your main tank's coming from the side, you want to come from above or below. From behind sometimes is applicable, but can be sketchy if they're able to turn around. But if you come from the same angle as your tank, then the enemy main tank is able to shut you both out. So you want to have that attention split of the enemy team. If you split their attention, then your team, which has focused attention of where your main tank's going in, is going to have the advantage.
So the best way to do that is also fog of war. We mentioned it earlier, like using the fog of war to your advantage. It's like you just wait patiently out of their vision until something happens and the other team's forced to use cooldowns in some way, shape, or form. Like the main tank blowing and a Nubrak using his E. The second he uses his E, he's committed to whatever's going on. So if he's forced to stun a Muradin that's going on his backline, that's your cue to just charge in, and you can just charge because you know they don't have a stun anymore, and you're just safe to run in there.
Too. Like if they're focused on, oh damn, I'm getting dove by Muradin, we got to get him off me. It's gonna take them a lot longer to react to you coming from the side, and to dismount you. Note to everyone who plays ranged carries: if there's someone mounted riding at your backline, please, for the love of God, dismount them.
Yes.
That's the biggest thing you can do to prevent your healers from dying. It's dismounting those bruisers and tanks.
Just use a skill shot or something. Like you're playing Reyna, use a Q. You don't have to auto attack him.
I'm also gonna stress quickly as well. The Gondo mentioned that you need to go in at the same time or slightly after your main tank. That's if you ever go in early, then what's going to happen is the main tank will just keep the 4-man away from your team, and everybody's just going to focus you, and you're going to die. And you're not going to do anything in this team fight. You 100% need the attention to be focused on different sides.
Yeah. You're not wrong there.
So that's positioning in according to team fights.
Yeah.
So the next point I guess we can move on then is camps, which for the solo lane generally you're not really that involved in camps. There is specific timings for when you camps, and specific maps and heroes you can do camps on, like a Sonya on any map that has a bruiser camp. You want to take that as early as possible. and you want to get someone to cover your lane. So you got to tell them in advance. You know you're gonna take the camp at 1 minute, which you can, but you need a little bit of help. You get your support to help you on bruiser camp. You tell either your tank or your second flex DPS to soak the lane for 1 wave. And you get on that bruiser camp. You do it at 1 minute. Huge impact in the game. Outside of that, you're not really taking camps off because your job is to get the XP from everywhere. And then when you have a time in between where you have nothing better to do and you got a teammate helping you, you got to clear those camps really quickly. So then you do take camps. But outside of that, you alone taking a camp generally is very unfeasible for solo lane, except for specific timings where you don't have to soak a wave because you just pushed it in. You don't have to soak the other wave because your team's already there. Then you just call people over. You say, we do the camp now quickly. You get it in between the waves, hopefully, so you don't miss too much XP. That's really the only time you camps.
That's something that communication becomes key when you start doing that sort of stuff, because you do need to communicate this. You can't just go off and do that camp, even if it's a fantastic idea to do it. If you don't tell your team, then you're missing XP and your team's already down. The camp's not going to get as much value as a single wave, generally speaking.
Coordination is key, is for TLDR of all that.
Yeah.
Because as a solo laner, you generally lack either damage or sustain tankiness against camps. And it's just going to eat up your time. Whoever in solo lane is first to clear the wave has advantage, generally speaking. So if you're busy taking a camp and they already cleared the wave, they have advantage. So if they're able to free clear the camp, from then on you're behind. You're going to be 20, 30 seconds behind in the rotations just because you're always 1 lane behind, which means the enemy solo laner can decide, do I just going to keep clearing waves back and forth? Or am I going to go force a fight 5v4 while I'm still stuck clearing the wave because I took the camp earlier? Yeah.
That's pretty much it. Good points. I can't really add much more to that. I like this last point though, and it's probably the most important point as a solo laner. And while we're doing that, type !join in chat for your chance at the Orphea code giveaway, and we'll pull that at the end. Also, while we're talking about this last point, if you have any questions for these guys, then please let us know and think about it during this time. But this last point, again, I mean, it's a great point, and it's super important, and it's definitely, in my opinion, I don't know if you guys agree, the most important point as a solo laner. Don't die, don't die, don't die, alright? It's if you die as a solo laner, aside from very, very different, like, extenuating circumstances, like Gondo mentioned before, in regard to if your team's getting a lot more value elsewhere because of your death, you dying can lose the game for your team. It'll lose a lane, it'll lose a heap of XP, it takes you off the map and gives them a lot more pressure in that lane, and it just makes the entire game harder for your team, so don't die.
The most important part about this is don't die past level like 15, 16. You die early game, whatever, right? It happens often. Nothing much gets lost from it. You're behind in XP a little bit, that's fine. You die level 16, level 20, level 22 to a gank because you cleared a wave, you lost the game for your team.
Had to yell at Gondo about this quite a bit at the start of this year.
First lesson going in competitive solo lane was I die alone once or twice a game. I literally solo lose the game. So when you're talking competitive, you as a solo laner, your job is not to win the game by making like huge plays. You can impact the game, but not as much as others. But you probably have one of the biggest influences about losing the game because you die because of overextend. Because it literally gives the whole map to the enemy. Anything they want, if they're coordinated, they can just go like, I want boss, or we take boss. He died. He's going to be down for 40 seconds, free boss. And then your team has to bail you out by making huge plays to come back from that. They want to push a keep when the fort's down, they get a keep. They want an objective, they get the objective just because you died. So it's like literally saying, that's for any laner really, but as a solo laner, you're often stuck in the mindset, I need to get the XP, I need to soak that wave. On that note, if it's not crucial, get the XP, because you're either already ahead and not close to a level spike, or you kind of smell something's fishy because no one's on the map, don't risk it. If you absolutely have to soak that wave, be mounted outside of vision range. So if they do come and check for you, you're already mounted and you can run off. Don't be that Sonya that spins in the wave and then gets killed by 4 people running it.
Well, that's pretty much all we have time for, guys. Quick audience Q&A. Any questions? A Garrosh riding out of a bush on a shark is the scariest thing known to man. That's not a question, but it's very, very true. Can't rename by mobile.
The only thing scary for that is a Garrosh just shouting, "You can't stop me."
Oh god. Oh god.
That's
yes.
the worst.
Well, in that case, the giveaway for the Orphea code and the winner. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. I'll quickly roll this dice.
It's got to be you, isn't it, Gondo?
What? No way.
The winner is Blankos. Wow, what a coincidence, guys. Oh, thank you. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. Thank you very much, Denchi Pullen, on winning the Orphea code. Please send me a PM on Discord or Twitch, and I'll PM that to you straight away. Next week's episode, we haven't really decided what we're going into, but we've got a couple of good points that we wanted to talk about, such as drafting, although that's not as important. But something that's across all heroes very generally is just your basic map mechanics and terminology around certain things during team fights and stuff. So I think we might go into that one, and don't know what you guys want to do, but that sounds pretty cool to me.
Basic mechanics need to be covered.
Yeah, we'll go through basic mechanics. But right now we're going to throw a host over to Gamester TV 1, where we are going to be watching the Spring Series, which these guys will be participating in, so I better let them go and get ready. The games start in about 2 minutes time, so they've got 2 minutes to get ready and do the map bans and picks and stuff, and yeah, we'll see you guys.
Most of you even doing Discord, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Right. Bye everyone. Thank you guys very much for coming. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.
See ya.